Hi, thank you for participating in our study on the overlap of human and machine explanations in dermatology. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate to you how to use Plainsight. If questions or problems arise during the course of the study, please contact us by email. We've divided this video into chapters so that you can skip topics that are not relevant for you. To skip topics, please move your mouse pointer to the red bar in the lower video area and then select the part of the video that is relevant for you based on the chapter names. In the first phase of our study, we'd like you to diagnose and annotate 15 images. We learned in our pilot study that this requires an average of 2 minutes per lesion. We'd therefore like you to take around 30 minutes to complete the study in one go. We also request you to process the images in order, as we assume for our statistical evaluation that they were all completed in the same order. For example, if you work through all the simple images first, this would distort our statistical analysis. To start, please navigate to the right view. There will be one dataset in your account. Click on it, and then click on Labeler at the top here. You should now see the dermatoscopic images. I'll first explain to you how to use Plainsight. If this part is not relevant for you, or if you're only interested in seeing certain parts of it, then please use the bar below to navigate accordingly. If you're only interested in the annotations, please use the video chapters to skip over to the annotation part. You can zoom in to take a closer look at the images. If you want to zoom in with the mouse wheel, please press and hold down the Control key on the keyboard, and then use the mouse wheel as usual. If you do not hold down the Control key, you only move the image up or down. If you don't have a mouse with a mouse wheel, but you have a touchpad on which you can scroll, you can hold down the Control key again, and then zoom accordingly with the touchpad. If you neither have a touchpad nor a mouse wheel, you can also enlarge the images using the Expand button, which is at this box here at the top right. Then the lesion is magnified. If this view is still not large enough, you can enlarge the view in your browser by pressing the Control and the plus button together. As long as nothing is selected here on the left side, you can then simply move the image. Please know, however, that you cannot annotate and move the image at the same time. So all image areas that you want to annotate must be completely inside this view. If you want to undo this, press Ctrl again together with the minus button. If the image quality is not sufficient despite all the zooming, you can open the Image Quality tab up here and select Insufficient instead of the default value of Good. We can then remove the image from our evaluation. In principle, you can also make color corrections in Plainsight. This would be up here using this tab. However, we'd ask you not to do this as we assume that all the dermatologists have processed the same images. The moment that the images have changed in terms of color or contrast, they're no longer the same images and would have to be handled statistically differently. Now we get to the annotations. What we need from you for each image is a diagnosis, annotations of the image areas relevant to the diagnosis, together with textual explanations that you'll select from the ontology, and a confidence in the diagnosis. I'll demonstrate this first with a very simple case, and then show you two more complicated cases. In this image, we see a light brown lesion that contains globules in the periphery, is structureless moving inwards, and that again contains more globules in the center. That means in this case, we're dealing with a symmetrical combination of patterns and colors, and therefore quite certainly a nevus. We've prepared for you two classes for the nevi, namely nevus leave-in and nevus excise. In this case, I would not excise this nevus. I then click to select the appropriate class, and then click to set waypoints to make the annotation. Since in this case the complete nevus is relevant for the diagnosis, as the entire lesion is symmetrical, I annotate the entire nevus here. Then I select the appropriate explanation here, the symmetrical combination of patterns and/or colors, click Out to close the selection, and then select a confidence. In this case, I'm very sure that it's indeed a nevus. I click Done, and when I'm happy with the annotation at this point, and I don't want to add any more image areas, I can click Submit here. It's important to know at this point that once you've submitted a lesion, you cannot change anything. That is, you cannot change the annotation, you cannot change the diagnosis, can't change the confidence, can't change anything. Therefore, I'd briefly like to show you how you can correct errors in the annotation. To correct annotations, select the corresponding annotation here on the left side. You can then see the waypoints that you've set. You can now make corrections by moving the points, for example if you move this further in. What would be important for us is that the annotations as a whole include all the important areas of the image, but not an excessive amount of surrounding skin. For example, we could still cut out this corner of the skin here. Here's how we do that. I click on the waypoints here and drag them inward to cut out the skin. If you want to correct your explanation or your confidence, go over here to the left and then click on this small arrow in the annotation. Then you come back to this view and can correct it here. You can then confirm this with save. If for some reason you've set one annotation too many, I'll use this melanoma here as a demonstration. Then you can close this area directly, select nothing here, select the annotation, and then you can simply delete it at the top via the delete label. If you're now satisfied with your annotations and your explanations, please click Submit. Depending on how fast your internet connection is, it may take a moment for the next image to load. I'd like to ask you in this case not to click Submit twice, simply because you'd then send the next image without any annotation and without diagnosis. Using this image, I'd like to show you how you can add multiple explanations to an annotation. In this image, we see a blue structureless lesion. It looks like a blue nevus to me, but I'm not completely sure. So I'd like to excise this lesion just to be safe. So I select nevus excise, I mark the entire lesion, and then select my explanation here. First, we only have one pattern and only one color, namely blue structureless. And further with the blue nevus, a melanoma simulator. I click on both explanations, and then I click Out to close this, and then select a confidence. I'm also relatively sure at this point that it is a blue nevus, so I choose a 7. I click on Done, and then on Submit. Finally, I'd like to show you a lesion that requires multiple annotations. In this image, we see a dark brown lesion with a black structureless area here in the upper part, a black to bluish area depending on how bright your screen is, also structureless in the lower left part, and radial lines that don't occupy the entire lesion circumference in the upper part of the periphery. Therefore, I assume that it's a melanoma. In this lesion, we thus have 3 areas to annotate, namely up here, here, and the edge. I'll start with this structureless area here. At this point, I select the explanation for this area, namely the eccentrically located structureless area, and then select a confidence. I click on Done, and I make sure I still have melanoma selected here, and then annotate the next area. Here, I again select an explanation, in this case, again the structureless area, and if you still remember the confidence that you chose for the first annotation, you can enter it here again, but this is not necessary. Finally, I'd like to annotate the radial lines in the upper part of the lesion. But at this point, this previously annotated region is obstructing my view and I don't see the margin properly. You can hide that by clicking on this eye icon here, then the annotations disappear. You can then, if melanoma is still selected, annotate the radial lines at the edge as before. Since this is only about the lines at the edge, I actually annotate the edge from inside again with some distance. If I end the annotation process right now, this new annotation will also disappear because I had hidden the annotations earlier. But don't worry, this is normal. I then select the explanation as before, and in this case, pseudopods are radial lines. And if I still remember the confidence, I could put it in here again, or just ignore it as I do in this case. Hiding can be undone by clicking the eye icon again, so that you can see all the annotations again. When I'm satisfied with all the annotations in this case as well, I click Submit. I have now annotated all the 15 images and have come to a new display. There's nothing more for you to do here. You can just log out in the lower left corner here. On behalf of our KTI team, I'd like to thank you once again for your participation. Goodbye.